Hello and welcome to an amazing podcast. And we are talking about Ghost in the Shell Sack Numbers Netflix series. And I
Yep.
have got to admit, for all jokey weirdness aside, this is the recent Ghost in the Shell series done for Netflix with an art style or art done by Ilya Kuvshinov. I probably butchered that name. I am super sorry, but he's a great artist, and if you type in Ilya, you definitely will be able to find him. A lot of really good stuff. And the actual title is Ghost in the Shell Sack 2045.
Yeah. I think the stack stands for.
Standalone
I'm
complex.
guessing, but oh, okay, that is what it is. Okay,
Yeah, but I
cool.
like saying sack because it's dirty.
Of course.
And if you guys have might have seen the trailers, it's a all 3D CG series with a very interesting look. Unlike most anime series, it completely forgoes the attempt at using cell shading and just goes full video game cutscene CG. And this might and for one thing, this isn't a style we usually see. I think the only other shows that use this style was a series like I have to say probably like early 2000s, mid 2010s called Appleseed. And I swear to God, it's probably in the same universe as I. No, it's not in the same universe, but yeah, Appleseed, another cyberpunk show, pretty good stuff. Definitely like one of those sort of obscure niche shows, but still a bit of recommend. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about Ghost in the Shell, and I will say, I really enjoyed this show.
Same. I mean, I didn't really enjoy it, but I think it's pretty good. And based on what I've seen online prior to actually watching it, I feel like people are kind of overhyping how not like people are exaggerating its badness. Like it seems like people in general were making a lot of fun of it, but I don't see why. It seems like pretty good, you know? I don't see any reason for that.
I definitely agree. So, a couple of things. So, in terms of animation, I will say I definitely like it, despite its initial style is not. It's very well executed. It doesn't draw your attention in any negative ways. In terms of flaws, I will say that watching it dub, it has the issue of it being CG. They can't really adjust the lip flaps.
Mm.
And I do find it funny that they use that like whole telepathic communication. And I swear to God, that's to save money on lip flaps. But I will say it very rarely hits the uncanny valley. I will say about the opening that I do have mixed feelings for it. I never think it's a good thing when one of the first things that anime shows you is a person's ass, but to each their own. And I will say
Wait, opening as in the opening
the
like song?
yeah opening song.
Okay.
And I will say that there are some scenes in the opening or some of the shots where I'm just like, that is a freaking Figma. That is a action figure right there. I remember I was showing you guys some of my like character stuff and how you guys always point out that it looks like a doll. Like that's this in full swing, and it really took me off guard because there were like cutscenes from Kingdom Hearts in like 2006 that looked so much better and with a similar art style. But after that, I will say the animation does its job. For example, for me personally, for me to call a show really great or the greatest show of all time for the season or whatever, it has to hit a certain threshold of animation quality, and I would say that it just hits that threshold. It's like the animation quality is the bare minimum for me to call it one of the great shows. That's like,
Hmm.
and note that that isn't in regards to writing. I can't make any judgment calls on that, but I do think the animation is solid.
Okay. Yeah, I pretty much agree. Although I'm not like really an expert on animation to begin with,
Mm.
but um, I at the very least didn't see anything wrong with the animation. I thought it was pretty good. I didn't see anything that like blew my mind, but
Right.
you know, like you said, I think it was solid, and there wasn't anything about it that made me like look twice. So I think that's actually a pretty good achievement considering the company that this show shares with other CG shows. Like there are many CG shows where the animation is just outright distracting. So
Oh, yeah.
at the very least, it wasn't like that with this show. I think, yeah, I agree. It was pretty solid. As mhm.
How did you feel about the opening?
Okay, yeah, I was just gonna get to that. So I think the opening, I didn't have a problem with it. I liked it actually. I didn't even notice the part about like it opening up with showing a character's ass. Like, I guess maybe I just kind of like just got caught up in the whole vibe of the opening. The main thing that I remember from it is just like the drills, like creating
Hmm.
the thing. I was like, oh, this is cool. The main vibe I got from it was like this is the kind of opening that you would see in like a movie or like a 007 movie.
Hmm.
Like it's that kind of feel. So I was like, this is cool and this is interesting, especially considering the fact that this is anime, and you never see this kind of thing, this kind of style opening for anime.
I would disagree. So I have mixed feelings about it. Visually, I think it works really well, but I was not a big fan of it as an opening. For me personally, I feel openings should give you like it should be the abridged version of the show. It should show you all the things that make the show really awesome and interesting. And all I got from this was a mood and eye candy. I didn't really like I didn't the opening didn't grab me and pull me through the world of the show as most other openings
Yeah.
would.
Yeah, I can definitely see that point. But for me, I don't when I look at openings, I don't care about that at all. For me, it literally is just mood and eye candy. Like if it looks good and the music goes along well with it, then
Hmm.
I 9 times out of 10 will like the opening or the ending. So
I will say that the opening for this, so like a lot of the other animes we've watched, I will say the opening establishes a world. This opening establishes a mood.
yeah, yep, I agree with that definitely.
How did you feel about the characters?
Um, okay, so in terms of I'll start with character designs.
Hmm.
I think the character designs were pretty. I guess the 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 character faces and stuff
Mm.
was cool.
Yep.
Were cool, but in terms of their actual clothing, like the stuff they were wearing, I thought they were pretty like
Generic.
kind of bland. Yeah, except for Motoko. Like
Easily.
even though she, yeah, like she, I think for me she's the only character design that really stood out from everyone else.
Hmm.
Everyone else in the show kind of blended in. It might also have to do with the fact that now that I think about it, she's like the only female.
Yeah.
At least in the first 2 episodes that I saw. Um, but she really stood out, whereas the others kind of blended in. It took me a while to even like figure out who was who and like what their names were and stuff.
Hmm.
But facially, their character designs were really cool, especially Motoko's. And clothing wise, she was the only one who I thought had a cool outfit.
Yeah.
You know,
And I will go back to the whole issue of I think the faces were really well done, but it goes into like look development and shader creation. All of the characters didn't feel like they were made out of skin. Like you could argue that it's because of rendering budget, but you have a lot of like real time video game characters who don't run into that problem. And I think that's like only big issue I have with them. And I will say it's not the kind of issue that is a deal breaker if you're watching it. Like the show's writing and action is good enough to like suck you into the world. But after if you just sit down and kind of like stew over and think about it, you get like the realization that those faces were lacking a little bit.
yeah. So two things. One is this is this style of CG characters, is this cell shading?
No, it
Okay.
is your standard gradient based PBR shader. Cell
Okay. All right.
shading has a strong 2D look, and it's built to mirror anime one for one. Or,
Okay.
in terms of visuals, it shouldn't mirror it in terms of movement, though. That's just a personal
Yeah.
opinion.
Okay. All right. I see.
Like, cell shading is what you would see in, like, something like Ruby or Guilty Gear or some of the stuff in, like, Doro Hedoro. This is more along the lines of Kingdom Hearts. It's very Unreal Engine-y.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, cell shaded stuff is like, it definitely looks a lot more 2D than this does. I
Yeah.
think.
Like, there's nothing
Yeah.
2D about this. Like, they use outlines for some of the characters, and
Hmm.
if you look at it, you'll see, like, a small outline when, like, their chins cross over their neck, and oh my god, why am I noticing all of this? But outside of that, you don't have many, like, 2D, like, many examples of 2D influences impacting the
Yeah.
style.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. What did you think about? What did you think about the character writing? Like how the actual characters, aside from how they look.
I enjoyed it a lot. I'm really happy. Like, I think all the characters had a good. Well, I think half the characters had a really good, distinct character to them, with the highlights being Makoto, the dude with the two metallic eyes, and Stan. And not because
Hmm.
he's the only black character, but I will say this: when you have African or black characters in general being written by like non-black or same thing with any other minority character, you always run the risk of the writers just writing a character brief and then the brief just having the word black, well, period next to it. I feel like with this character and characters like him and Barrett from Final Fantasy VII, I would definitely say the first sentence of this character brief was just the word black, but I do feel like there were at least 4 or 5 paragraphs afterwards. I would say that, so typically, and what I've noticed is when it comes to like writing characters, their ethnicity plays varying roles depending on the writer. So, for example, you could have a character where their ethnicity plays absolutely no role in their personality. You could have a character that whose ethnicity accentuates or accents their personality, which you can see in cases like Barrett, where he isn't like your typical stereotypical black guy. He's a big, brash, bold character, but he acts that he's an African or Black American or black version of that kind of character. His character comes first, and his ethnicity impacts some of those decisions. But you have the opposite, like the more less likable, in my opinion, case where their ethnicity is their character. And you can see that in like Michael Bay movies and a few of the other horror movies where they have like the fodder black guy. But what I will say about Stan in this is he goes the middle route, and I feel like that is probably the best route to take.
So where, because the way I saw it, I didn't really see any. I didn't see any indication of like his ethnicity being accented. So like, where did you see that? Like, in what situations?
Basically, a lot of his speech patterns, like he
Oh,
has a very
oh,
like
yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. Go
he
ahead.
has a very African American dialect to him,
Oh,
and but aside from that, I did like maybe that's what I'm kind of referring to when I talk about the whole middle road. But I will say
maybe.
this:
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I believe that he was black, and I also believe that he was a character.
Yeah.
You don't usually get like both those sometimes.
I didn't see. I watched the first episode Japanese with English subs.
Oh, you wouldn't see it at all.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't see any of that. But then episode 2, and I'll get into why I switched to dub for episode 2 later. But episode 2 I switched to the dub, and I didn't notice it then either, but maybe that's just because he didn't have that many lines in episode 2. But I do agree with you. Like, I think it's always it's good to, like, I tend, if you have, a story with different ethnicities, I think a pretty safe route is not have the ethnicity of the character have any effect on the character, because I think that's typically how life is anyway. I think a more sophisticated route is if you can have their ethnicity play into who they are without it just being
who they are,
showcasing, it being their whole personality, but also just being like tropes,
Yeah, because I will say, like, if you do go the first route, you lose the point of having a diverse cast of characters.
Yeah.
But you then again play a really tricky balancing act. And I will say, like, Overwatch does a really good job. Is like one of the best examples of that, honestly.
Yeah.
But that's done with that tangent. I will say that outside of the first episode, one issue I had with the first episode was it was very exposition heavy, and I don't think the exposition was executed as well as it could have been. But I will give it a pass, since first episode and you need to, like, crank out your world building. I will say that in terms of dialogue and character interactions, the second episode really picks things up well.
Yeah, so the exposition stuff kind of gets into why I switched to dub, but first I'll talk about characters. For me, none of the characters really stood out except for Stan, actually. Like, he's the only one who, everyone else kind of just seemed like, just like kind of boring. And they did have different personalities, but like if I had to like pick characters who really had distinct personalities, it was Bato or Bayo, the
Bato.
The old guy with the gray hair. Bato, the guy with the gray hair, and then Stan. And really those are the only two. The other guys in the team. Oh, and the robot, ironically, Tachikoma. Tachikoma was unironically probably like the top 3 characters in those first 2 episodes. Okay.
So I will say this: the robot's dialogue was way ttoo wholesome. Like, I really wanted to, like, hear it, like, drop these, like, really dark, like, I want to bathe in their blood, whee! Like, I wanted, like, it was like listening to, like, Bubbles from the Powerpuff Girls, like, spout all this, like, really dark, violent stuff.
I didn't mind, though. I thought it was cute. Like,
it was.
And it made it, like, kind of, it made you really feel, like, I literally felt for the robots more than any of the characters.
I know.
Because the fact that they were just so, like, they're, like, just so simple-minded and innocent, and they'll, like, easily jump in to protect the team members,
Like, so, I wanted to hug every single one of those things. Like, oh my god.
Yeah, I agree with that. The robots goated. The only character that really stood out to me, like, personality-wise, was Stan. And, the others, not so much.
I swear to God, I know it was iPad. It was like one-eyed guy and two-eyed guy, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Although one thing I thought was really weird is, like, Stan's nickname, Omoshiro. Like,
oh yeah,
you're in a military group and you're using that as your call sign. Like, Stan is so easier to, like, get out. Like, you try to, like, call out that name, like, you have, like, 5 seconds to, like, alert someone that something's about to go down, and you spend, like, half of them trying to say that name.
Yeah, that's true, actually. I didn't think about that. But I did think it was a funny nickname, because, so, I think it probably plays off better, and if you watch that part, at least when they name him in Japanese, because his name is Stan, and like uh, they're like I think they were calling him Standard, and then he was like, my name is Stan, and he was like, actually no, you're not Standard, you're Omoshiroi, like interesting, so we're gonna call you Omoshiro. Anyway, yeah, I think that played off better in the Japanese, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so for the exposition stuff, I agree with you a lot. At the very beginning of episode 1, that exposition part, I had to skip back like probably like 6 times to actually get all of it because it just moved way too fast. Then again, I was watching it in subs, so that might also be why. But and that's a criticism that I would have for the entirety of episode 1, which is that the subs just moved too fast in general. It's like it was hard to keep up, especially because, like you said, episode 1 had a lot of exposition, so that was annoying. So then in episode 2, I switched to the dub, but then I found that it also still wasn't that much better because this is one thing that goes into, I guess, I think a big reason that this was caused was because of the fact that because it was in CG, they were able to take advantage of a lot of things. So like, they could do like obviously if you're doing something in CG, like the camera's free, you can move it around wherever you want easily, and they did like a whole bunch of like 360 shots and stuff. But one thing that they did a lot, which was annoying, which is that they would have parts where there would be some character would be in conversation with another, delivering exposition, and in the background there would be something happening.
Yeah.
And there would be like movement in the background. Like one scene that's specifically sticking out in my mind is Togusa, when after he caught that hacker guy and he was outside by his car talking on the phone with that minister dude. They were like giving important information, but in the background that hacker was like, running around with the police officers trying to escape, and that was so distracting, and that happened like a couple times. So I feel like it's cool that they're able to do that. Obviously, if you're doing it in 2D, 99% of the time they're not going to do something like that because it's just like a waste of energy. But in CG, you can like afford to like animate a lot more.
Right.
So, but the fact that they were able to do that just made it distracting, and it made it hard to keep up. Like even by the end of episode 2, even after I switched to dub, not only did I still have to skip back a few times, but it's still I'm still not completely sure about everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Oh, and another thing I will say is that another advantage of this being in CG, like another effect that's cool that they did was the optical camouflage. Like that's like really where stuff like this shines because, I don't imagine you could do that very easily in 2D.
But again, like CG, all the animation, super good, super solid. If they have a really good story to sort of back it up, and I would like to see a few more awesome set pieces, like the whole scene where she's like trying to catch up with that drone that's like flying in midair, and she's like shooting down the missiles.
Yeah,
that's that's about 80% what I'm looking for. It didn't like hit that final. It didn't get that last final 20% to get my action like hype pumping really hard, but it was getting really close to it.
Yeah. And what did you think about the environment art?
I liked it. I definitely took a few screenshots while I was watching it, so.
Oh, really? Okay, that's cool. Yeah. I liked I thought, well, episode 1 in the desert was just like like I didn't think much of it, but I liked the city when they showed Togusa in the city. I thought that was cool. I liked that aesthetic, and I wish we had seen more of it. Like I wish they had done like a kind of like a wide panning shot of the whole city or something like that, but they just showed that like one street. But I thought that looked nice.
I will say that so whenever I like talk about art, I always think of two categories: creativity versus construction. Creativity being self-explanatory, how creative it is, and construction or craftsmanship being how well it's put together. I will definitely say that this excels it excels very nicely in craftsmanship, but creativity is sort of middles in a little bit. Like, I didn't
Yeah.
really see anything mind blowing or new or like something that just like sticks in my mind. But I will say that it was all executed really well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that too. So yeah, and one more thing I'll say is, as far as like cyberpunk dystopia type story goes, I think this story, to its credit, is actually honestly pretty realistic.
Yeah.
2045, that's like 25 years from now, looking at how 2020 is going, I honestly truly would not be surprised if the state of like politics and the economy is and like sociology in general is how it is in this show. The only thing I would say that I don't see happening by that point is that high advanced level of cyborgs.
Damn,
everything else though,
that sucks, dude. Like, that's the like.
Yeah,
I would be fine
does.
with all that stuff if I could just become a kick-ass cyborg.
Yeah. I feel like that those, like Motoko type cyborgs are probably another like 100 years away, maybe. But
Another generation.
Everything else though, like I think they're probably not far off.
Yeah. I will say, like, I gotta admit though, when I was like watching the first two episodes and got introduced to like the antagonist for those two episodes, literally the first thing that was going through my mind was like, God damn, the Bernie Bros are going hard now. It was literally like the antagonist felt like if you took the extreme left and the extreme right and fused them together. They felt like if Bernie Sanders just stopped giving a fuck and just went straight hard militaristic.
Okay, so
they feel like they were they were members of a Bernie Sanders led police state.
Well, I think they're obviously way more radical than I feel like those guys are what happens in a world where Bernie Sanders loses and like things like pretty much things just keep getting bad, and by 2045 that doesn't surprise me at all. But so that brings me to my final point about this, which is that I think the show has potential in that it doesn't try, because in episode 2 I was like at first I was kind of confused about the whole premise of the show. So I didn't really understand who it was that those guys that they were fighting were. And they seemed like bad guys to me, right? But by the end of episode 2, when I realized that pretty much they're pretty much living in a fascist police state, and General Motoko and her team are just operators of that. Like, they're just literally part of the military. They're literally like police today, honestly.
Right.
Like, they're functionally no better. I definitely would not say that they are like on the right side of things in the story. And I wouldn't necessarily say that those football players were on the right side either. But like, for example, if I was like plopped into that world and they told me pick a side, I would easily pick the side of the football players over General Motoko's team, like easily.
No, like when they mentioned like they were doing this because of like student debt, that hit me right in the heart. That hit me where I was living.
So yeah, and like, so I think this show has potential because if this show tried to make it seem like, if this show tried to play it off like, if it was done in a way that tried to make it seem like Motoko and her team were the good guys, I would have a real problem with the show, and I would just say it's pretty stupid and the writers are pretty stupid. But it's interesting because in episode 2, when like Bato was having that conversation with like the running back dude. He's like, yeah, honestly, we just do this because we like to do it. And he's like, so you guys aren't any better. And he's like, I guess not. And the fact that I would have been very mad at the show if they hadn't at the very least, admitted that. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I'm going to continue with the show, but if I did continue, that would be the thing that I'm most interested in, to see how the show turns out to treat Motoko and her team, whether they end up at the end. I feel like Ghost in the Shell is not the type of series that deals in black and white. It's probably like it's going to be a gray thing. But I just hope that the show doesn't try to make them seem like the good guys, because I definitely don't think they are. And I think that complexity is probably like the biggest strength of the show for me.
Yeah, I will say this. This is the first time I've ever watched a Ghost in the Shell media, a form of Ghost in the Shell media, and I was very pleasantly surprised.
Oh, really? You haven't seen any Ghost in the Shell before?
Nope.
Oh, wow. Okay. I would definitely suggest... What was I missing? Yeah, you should... I've only seen the original Ghost in the Shell movie. That's the only thing I've seen. Mm-hmm. And honestly, plot-wise, nothing special there. Action-wise, it's okay. It's really just like it's a classic. It's a classic because of the arts and the world building, especially. Like, it's just a really cool world. It's really just like it's just something that brings you into this sci-fi world, and like the plot is kind of just like a loose thing to like keep you going through it, and it is kind of interesting, and it does explore like interesting like themes about being a cyborg and what it is to be human. Mm-hmm. But it's so well done. It's kind of like Akira in that way, that I feel like you should definitely watch it. Okay. Just because of that. Have you seen Akira?
No.
Oh yeah, you should absolutely watch both of those.
And you turn in my nerd license.
Yeah, I mean, I only watched Akira just last year, so I think in general, I'm more I care mostly about plot. So stuff like Akira and Ghost in the Shell, at least the original movie, don't appeal that much to me because of that. But I can definitely appreciate the animation, the direction, the art, the concept, the world building, all that stuff. I can definitely appreciate it. And I feel like, you should definitely see that, especially if you're an artist. Okay. They're really good.
Awesome.
All right. So, and I will say, Ghost in the Shell, this is the second Ghost in the Shell piece of media that I've seen. And in terms of plot, even though I probably won't continue, it's definitely an improvement over the original movie. Because it clearly has like a plot that's really there. So yeah.
All right, how would you rate it?
I would give it a 6.
I'd give it a 7.5. I really loved all the military action stuff, and that whole cyberpunk sci-fi military thing with all like crazy technology that also seems very cool and grounded. Always is an really huge soft spot for me that really like is a good selling point. But I do think the less than well executed exposition was definitely one of the sour points for me.
Yeah, I agree. That I totally agree with the exposition part. It was pretty confusing. I got the general gist, but it could have been done better, like you said.
All right. And with that said, that's been our first impressions of Ghost in the Shell SAC 2045. Tune in next time when we talk about more anime and I get even more tongue-tied.
Yep, thank you, and see you next week. Bye.